1. I joined a new job at a new city in a country new to me. I was looking for a 2-bedroom apartment and wanted to share one room with someone else, as it could come out cheaper than renting 1 bedroom alone. To my luck, I came to know about someone who worked in my company who, coincidentally, was also from my city who was also looking for a roommate. I got in touch with him and we went on apartment hunting. We found a decent one, and he was reluctant to sign the lease and asked if he could stay outside the lease, as he may switch jobs and move out in a few months. He was also not ready to get internet, power, water under his name. I was just too excited to have found an apartment, and went ahead with this arrangement. I was pretty confident I could find someone else if and when he leaves, so I didn't care much. The move-in date was 30 days away, and for the days in between I found temporary accommodation for both of us at a friend's apartment, who had just moved out of the city 15 days back, and his apartment, just a 10-minute walk from the unit I had leased for another 45 days and was also empty. He had left the unit empty, and lease breakage became higher than 2 months' rent. We both decided to stay in that unit for the 30 days and pay 1 month rent to my friend. We decided not to buy any big furniture until we moved into our apartment, to make the move easier, avoiding hiring movers. A couple of days after moving into the temporary apartment unit, my new roommate informed me that his wife had just delivered a baby girl, and he was going to travel home for a few weeks. I was happy for him and wished him luck. His travel date was just a day before the move-in date to the apartment we had leased. So basically, I had to move both our clothes, luggage, furniture, etc. all alone. It was tiring, but since both the apartments were at walkable distance, I was able to finish the move in 4 or 5 hours. He came back almost a month later. Then came the first month of splitting the expenses. I sent him the Excel sheet with the split up, and he refused to pay the amount I had mentioned. Half of the rent, plus water, plus power, plus internet, and he just paid 10% of his share, stating he was in home only for 3 days, and will pay only for those many days. I was kind of okay with him paying for utilities prorated to the number of days he stayed, but I could not accept the rent that way. Either he stayed or not. His bags and furniture was in home, and I did not sublet the unit for the days he was out, and subletting wasn't even something we discussed before. After all, I was the one who carried his luggage and furniture to the new apartment. He was not considerate. I gave him one last chance to be fair. I tried to explain the fallacies in his argument, but he ignored me. So I decided he has to learn about something called consequences. I was having an international travel plan, kind of on the horizon for a long time, and I decided this was the time to book tickets and travel for 4 weeks. Plus, I asked my employer to nominate me for some work-related conference at Vegas, 1 week, and I was also going to travel to meet my wife, who is living a 2.5-hour flight away, multiple times in the coming months, another 3+ weeks. Adding all these days, plus a couple of road trips with my friends, I must have been out of home for at least 2 months, and he ended up paying more than what he saved by cheating me earlier. I was so petty that once, while returning from a trip, I reached my apartment lobby by around 11:40 p.m. I just waited there until midnight, so that I'll have 1 less day shared. And I specifically mentioned this to him when we were splitting the bills. 2. So this happened about 8 years ago. I'm a commercial truck driver. That being said, we have certain Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration rules we have to follow, such as 11 hours max drive time a day, 14 hours max of on-duty a day, then a 14-hour clock that ticks down from the second you leave off-duty or sleeper berth status. Then there is also company policies such as we're supposed to start driving once our 10-hour break is up. This will become very relevant later on. Now, I was always on time with my deliveries, never had any issues when it came to that. There was one trip I was on. I went from somewhere in California to some construction site in Indiana. I had plenty of time to do the trip and be early, as I usually was. So the night before my delivery appointment, I parked at a truck stop roughly 30 miles away. I gave myself 2 hours in the morning to get there and still be an hour early. I anticipated traffic, but what I didn't anticipate was nature's urgent calling. I ended up being 30 minutes late due to a combination of those two things. My dispatcher messaged me, upset that I was late. I explained what happened, then she gave me grief because I was late and had been off duty for 14 hours total. And company policy says I'm required to start driving after my 10-hour break. I asked her to not micromanage me, and she responded that she was going to put a service violation on my report. I told her to go ahead, and I'll be following Department of Transportation and company's rules to the T to avoid any future issues. Now, when commercial truck driving, anything you do in the truck is supposed to be logged as on duty or driving. I hauled flatbeds. I was responsible for securing my loads and tarping them. That can take, on average, of anywhere from 45 minutes to sometimes 2 hours. Almost all drivers only log about 30 minutes, so save time on the 70-hour clock, myself included. We also only log about 30 minutes on duty for loading and unloading, then go into off-duty status. Always takes over an hour minimum to get loaded or unloaded. The 10-hour breaks are required to reset your 11-hour drive time and 14-hour daily clock. I was in the habit of always parking as close to my delivery as possible. And I ran my truck so I was parked by 5 or 6 in the afternoon. That week, if I parked 10 miles from the customer and I had a 9 a.m. unload time, I'd drive to the customer as soon as my 10-hour break was up. About 4 a.m., I'd had 10 miles down the road for a 9 a.m. unload. I'd go off duty at 9. I'd go back on duty to log the entire unload time. My dispatcher messaged me asking why I went so early to the customer, and I responded back with the company policy. She wasn't happy because that severely limited how many miles I could go for that day. I continued this process of maliciously going on duty for the most mundane things, being extremely early and, in general, destroying my 70-hour work clock with a bunch of senseless on-duty time that, per company policy, was required to be logged even though it's like an unwritten rule to just log 30 minutes and go off duty to preserve your clock. I usually average 2,500 miles a week. That week I barely got 1,100 miles, because I was consistently running out of my time on my 14-hour clock. Every time my dispatcher fussed at me, I cited the company policy or FMCSA rule relevant to why I had gone on duty at whatever time. She never said a word to me again about how I run in the truck. Just to clarify, I'll add a little more context, as some people don't understand why it could take 1.5 hours for a bathroom stop. Which it wasn't 1.5 hours solely for that. Driving a truck and parking one is far different from a car. There's been many times I've pulled into 3 or 4 different truck stops and was unable to park because there were no open spaces. There's also times where it's taken 45 minutes just to get through because they can be such a clusterfuck between how crowded they are. Ignorant drivers parking where they shouldn't and bottlenecking the parking lot and so on. That day, it was early in the morning, just outside of a major city. The truck stop was fairly busy, but the whole thing only took maybe 20 minutes between parking and so on. The rest of the delay was because of traffic due to a bad accident that had 2 lanes closed in combination with morning rush hour traffic. I had only parked 30 minutes for my delivery. I started driving 2 hours before my delivery time so that I'd be at least an hour early with regular rush hour traffic. Wanted to clarify that because some people seem to think I dragged my feet, got caught and retaliated because of that. That wasn't the case. Furthermore, I had never been late for a delivery before that. My dispatcher knew she could send me my load details and I'd be on time. You won't find any long-haul truck driver that takes lightly to being micromanaged. 3. So I want to start off by saying that I do not hate my job. I've worked at what would be considered a chain senior home for 10+ years. I love the residents, and quite frankly, they're most of the reason I've stayed so long. And a few co-workers, of course. The company used to be great to work for, plenty of PTO, a holiday bonus just for about every holiday, and so on. As the founder of the company started aging and heading towards retirement, other investors and part owners started stepping up. That's when we noticed small things slowly being taken away. I also want to mention we really don't get paid correctly for the kind of work we do. First, the holiday bonuses started disappearing. Then it was yearly raises. Improvements like new furniture, carpet, TVs started showing up. Painters out every couple of months fixing things up, which I think is great. The building is old and could use a facelift. However, the areas where the workers are at haven't been touched. I'm talking ancient kitchen supplies, leaky pipes and grease traps, leaking ice machines, and that's just the top of the iceberg. We've had such a bad staffing shortage that the people who do show up to work are honestly getting sick of working short and not even having the materials to perform the job to the standard the company is asking for. So here's where the big problem comes in. The corporate office sent out letters to every resident and their family members toward the end of last year, stating that the staff would be getting raises, and they needed to adjust for inflation, so the rent would be going up between $100 to $300 a month, depending on the apartment the resident has. The residents were angry, understandably. We haven't been providing anything that would warrant such an increase. So for the last couple of months, I've been waiting for the raise, and it finally just came through last week. 31 measly cents an hour. After working faithfully for this company for over 10 years, I'm making under $13 an hour. On Tuesday, I will be putting in my letter of resignation, explaining why I will not be sticking around. Now here's where the petty part comes in. And I feel like I could do better, but honestly, I'll need them as a reference considering they have been my entire work history. There are 2 other staff members in my department. One is on medical leave for God knows how long, and the other one is moving out of the country in a couple of weeks. This company is notoriously bad at hiring people and would rather push the work on the remaining staff for as long as possible, until they absolutely have to hire someone. So now they'll have to hire a whole new crew, and nobody will be around to train them properly by the time they actually get around to it. So many horrible things have gone unpunished around there. But I think it's time the staff strikes back. Any advice on how to be a bit pettier while keeping my reference is welcome. 4. Context. I was the only white person. Everyone else was Punjabi or Pakistani. I am also a 19-year-old female and am completely self-reliant on putting myself through university and don't get any help from my family. Also, ATO equals Australian Taxation Office. So I worked for a local pizza place for 10 months before the owners sold the business and changed ownership. It was only a small place. You only needed 4 staff for a busy night, and I was a pizza chef. During the transition phase, I trained the new owners on everything, making and packing pizza, using the order system, all of the health and safety rules, customer service skills. During this time, we got along really well. Even on some late nights, they would drop me home if it was raining, and we would talk about family, friends, hobbies, etc. Unfortunately, on the first week they took over, I got sick from tonsillitis and couldn't work. But when I came back, their attitude towards me changed completely. They were rude, gave me less shifts, and dismissed me completely when I tried to help and refused to give me more responsibilities, when beforehand they told me that when they took over, I'd be learning how to make pastas and not just pizzas. They were also not listening to me when I told them they weren't following the OHS, that's the Occupational Health and Safety rules, working without a hairnet, not washing hands, etc. During this time, I saw one of my coworkers without a hairnet on. She has butt-length hair and it was down in a braid. I told her in front of the owner that she needed to wear a hairnet as it's a breach of our OHS rules and that if someone gets hair in their food or gets sick, then the company will be liable, and we could get in trouble. She told me no, and the owner agreed with her. 10 minutes later, I found a ball of her hair sitting right where I make pizza. I grabbed it and took it to her and told her where I found it and that she has to put a hairnet on. She put a hairnet on top of her head, but left her braid out. The next week I was talking to one of my coworkers, and he wanted the next day off, and I wanted to work, so we asked if we could switch, as it would have been a Tuesday, normally slowest days of the week. and that it would be a good opportunity for me to get training in making pastas while my coworker could relax. The owner said no, and that they wanted the other guy to work and not me. A month or so later, I had a 2-week holiday to the US that they knew about and approved of, and when I came back, I asked about my shifts and they told me they don't need me anymore. When I asked why, they couldn't give me a proper reason. Some reasons they gave me were that I was rude and racist to coworkers, that I refused to work in the kitchen, I messed up paperwork, and that they were overstaffed, all of which is false. I am literally a chef and texted my now ex-coworkers asking if I was rude or racist to them. They said I'm not, and the only paperwork was my employee form, which I didn't mess up. They then hung up on me, and they sent me abusive texts saying that I'm racist to my coworkers. Again, I asked them this, and they said I'm not. And when I responded, they told me they would get a lawyer involved if I contacted them again. Just to reiterate, under the old ownership, who I worked with for 9-ish months, there were never any problems between myself, the owner, and any of my coworkers. Anyway, so here is where my PettyRevenge comes in. While I worked there, I saw them do a lot of cash-in-hand payments to staff, along with some other sketchy stuff with money. It's been 3 months, and I don't have my super retirement fund payment. So I called the ATO and told them about everything. About all the cash-in-hand payments, about the absence of my super payment, not paying staff fairly, etc. The person on the phone told me that my information was more than enough, and that they would be starting an investigation which will most likely turn into the owners being audited. So go ahead and fire me for no reason, I'll report you. By the way, now I have an amazing job and absolutely love my coworkers. I've been there for a while now, and I've never had any complaints. This workplace is also pretty diverse. 5. My childhood friend stole $20 from me, so I ruined her relationship. She was my best friend from 1st grade. Hadn't seen her since then. Fast forward to 2017, and we started talking, and she wanted something serious. But I explained to her that I don't want a long-distance relationship, so it ended there, and we never spoke again. When I went to visit my home country, I happened to stay a couple of days in her city, so I texted her to let her know I was in town. She was in disbelief, so she invites me to her home, and I went there that same night. We sit in the apartment park, started talking about our childhood memories. What have we been up to, other random stuff. She mentioned that she had a boyfriend and they were getting married soon. And mentioned that she was getting a bunch of plastic surgeries next month, all paid by her boyfriend. I told her that I wanted to change my money, so she offered to take me to a currency exchange, but they were all closed, so we went back to her apartment. When I decided to leave, she told me that the doorman shouldn't allow visitors at this time, because of COVID. So she told me she would bribe him and asked me to pay him $5. I only had 20s and 100s on me, so she offered to take the bill up to her home and come back with the exchanged currency. I gave her a $20 bill, and there she went. I waited for 10 minutes until I got impatient and started calling her. She didn't respond, so I went to the doorman and asked him if it's true that the guests weren't allowed in at this time, and he told me no, so I told him how she scammed me. Then she comes out to the balcony and tells me those 20s are not going to make you go bankrupt, nor will they get me rich. I was fuming on my way home, not because of the money, but because I got played. I screenshot our conversation when she invited me over, and some old horny texts she used to send me, and photoshopped the dates so they looked recent. I searched her whole Instagram followers and found her boyfriend, right on time before she blocked me. I sent the dude the screenshots and told him I was having sex with his girlfriend, and I felt too bad for making someone cheat and decided to do the right thing. He went to the apartment to check if I was really there, and there I was. Good thing he didn't check the whole thing, otherwise I would have been busted. He breaks up with her and she calls me, insulting the living shit out of me for lying. I acted as if we did have sex just to make her angrier, and in case she was recording for proof. He asked me if I was the one who gave her the 20. She took him out for ice cream with the money. Hey everybody, HellFreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 220. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Please do boink the like button before you go. That is one of the key factors in getting YouTube to recommend the video to other people. And we like it when they do that. More people watch them. All right, let's see. I don't think we have any special shout-outs today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, if you could wear one color and one color only for the rest of your life, what would it be? I'm going to shock you all and say black, but you might have more interesting answers and reasons, so please do leave your answers in a comment below. And with that, I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.